Today we're shifting gears a little. Instead of our usual analysis, we're actually going to recount a true story for you. It's quite a mystery, one that unfolded across continents over more than 20 years. Expect unsettling questions, a really long wait for answers, and, well, a chilling possibility at its core. We really want to just tell you the story as it happened.
And I'll be jumping in here and there, just offer maybe a brief clarification to help keep the details straight as we go.
Okay, so this story, this mystery, it starts 20 years back. It stretches all the way from Thailand to the rugged parts of England. In the UK, some hikers, they made a really grim discovery. A woman's body. The initial signs pointed towards Southeast Asia, probably Thailand, but the case just stalled. It became this local enigma, they called her the Lady of the Hill.
Right. And then incredibly, just recently, January 2025, a potential suspect was finally apprehended.
So our goal today is simply to tell you how this whole thing unfolded. Why did it take so long to even get to a potential suspect? And what was that crucial connection back to Thailand?
Set the scene. It's September 2004. Or, in the Thai Buddhist calendar, 2547. 5 hikers. They're in the Yorkshire Dales National Park in England, planning to do the Three Peaks route, which is pretty challenging.
Yeah, but the weather, it just didn't cooperate. Turned really bad, actually. Heavy rain, storms.
So they had to change their plans. For safety, obviously.
Instead of the peaks, they took a lower path, along the Pennine Way. And as they're walking, they reach the spot near a cave called Pennygent Pot. A few stop for a break.
And one of them wanders off a bit, just exploring a nearby beck that's like a small stream,
Yeah.
runs near the cave.
And it's there, in the water, by the cave, that he sees something really disturbing.
Unforgettable, I imagine.
At first, he actually thought it was a mannequin, just lying in the stream.
Right. You wouldn't immediately assume.
No, but then he got closer, and the reality hit him. It was a body, a deceased woman. He later mentioned something particularly unsettling. Her fingernails were missing.
Oh, wow. Okay. So when the police arrived, their initial look gave them some basics, but not a lot to go on. A young woman, they thought, maybe 25 to 35 years old, quite petite, around 149 centimeters, weighed about 63 kilograms, dark brown, shoulder-length hair.
And she was found face down, in the water. Crucially, she had no clothes on her upper body, but shoes wearing green jeans, Marks & Spencer brand, and socks.
And there was one more thing. A piece of jewelry.
Yeah, a gold ring on the ring finger of her left hand.
Which immediately suggests, maybe she was married. And based on how she looked, the police thought she was likely Asian. Probably Southeast Asian.
So the big questions right away were, was this a terrible accident or was it homicide?
The location itself raised questions. It's a popular hiking area, yes, but that beck.
It's quite small, isn't it?
Exactly. It seemed unlikely she just ended up there by accident. So a theory started to form. Maybe she hadn't died there. Maybe she was put somewhere else and the stream carried her down.
Which leads to a pretty disturbing thought. Maybe a killer chose a spot deliberately, thinking the water would move the body.
Yeah, somewhere less likely to be found quickly.
So obviously, a post-mortem was absolutely vital.
But that presented its own problems. Major challenges, actually.
Because the body had already started to decompose quite a bit.
Right. Which made it incredibly hard for the pathologist to figure out how she died. Or even see any obvious injuries.
One interesting point, though, there wasn't much insect activity, which suggested she hadn't been outdoors for very long, maybe only a few days.
Which, doesn't rule out foul play, but it does make the timeline tricky.
Given that she was found without upper clothing, in what could have been a cold environment,
Right.
One theory they considered was something called paradoxical undressing.
Okay, maybe we should explain that briefly.
Yeah, please do. It sounds counterintuitive.
It really is. It's a physiological response to severe hypothermia, extreme cold. Your body tries to conserve heat, obviously. But if your core temperature drops too low, the part of your brain controlling temperature can kind of glitch.
Glitch? How so?
Well, chillingly, it can make the person feel intensely hot, burning up, even though they're freezing. And so tragically, they might start removing their clothes, which of course makes things much worse, much faster.
Wow. That's, truly tragic. The body working against itself.
But it's really important to stress, this was just a theory at the time.
Right. With the decomposition, they couldn't confirm it. Not with the technology back then.
Exactly. So the police had to focus on trying to figure out who she was.
Their first step was creating a facial composite, an artist's impression based on the remains.
And they sent this image out to various Asian embassies, hoping for a match, maybe a missing person report.
But nothing came back. No leads from the embassies. Her identity just remained this haunting question mark.
And as the leads dried up, years went by. The case just went cold.
That's when I got the name right. Lady of the Hills. Poignant.
Very. But even though she was unidentified, the local people in Horton and Ribblesdale, they really responded with compassion. About 40 villagers, they pooled money together for her burial in the local churchyard.
That's quite moving, ensuring she had a dignified resting place, even as an unknown.
It really is.
Okay, let's jump forward quite a bit now to 2016. That's Buddhist year 2559. After years of silence, things started moving again. Forensic science had advanced, new tools, new possibilities.
Yeah, and a new lead investigator took over. Detective Chief Inspector Dave Prentice.
And he came in with a fresh eye, a specific theory.
He suspected she was Thai, married to a white man, and had lived in England sometime between, say, 1990 and 2000. That's Buddhist years 2533 to 2543.
And he mentioned something quite common in these sorts of sad cases, didn't he?
He did. He noted how often when an Asian woman married to a Westerner disappears, the husband might claim she just went back home.
Right, which can send investigators down a completely wrong path for ages.
Exactly. Prentice and his team also went back to the scene, looked at it again, with these new ideas in mind. And that detail about the location of the stream being about a mile from a road, only reachable by a 4x4.
That seemed really significant now, especially combined with the heavy rain around the time she likely died.
It suggested something pretty specific about whoever put her there.
That they probably had a 4x4 vehicle.
And, crucially, knew the area well. Knew that spot. Knew the stream. Knew how the rain would affect it. Knew it might wash the body downstream.
They also used geographical profiling techniques, right?
Yeah, looking at patterns in similar cases. Criminal evidence often suggests people dispose of bodies within a certain range of their home, maybe 80 to 130 kilometers.
And usually quite close to where they left their vehicle, maybe within 50 meters or so.
So that helped narrow down the potential search area for where the perpetrator might live.
But the real game changer, technologically speaking, was isotope analysis. They did this in 2016, the same year Prentice took over.
It's amazing stuff, really. They analyzed different versions, isotopes of elements like carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen in the body's tissues.
Like a chemical fingerprint of where you've been.
Pretty much. Bone analysis can tell you about where someone grew up based on the water and food isotopes absorbed over years.
And hair is even more detailed for recent history, right?
Exactly. Hair grows, so different sections of a single strand can show where someone was living in the months or years before they died. As their diet and water source changed, the isotopes in the growing hair changed too. It's like a timeline.
So, what did the analysis show for the Lady of the Hills?
Well, it confirmed she was definitely from Southeast Asia, which backed up the initial assessment.
Okay.
But the hair analysis was key. It indicated that for the 5 years before her death, she'd likely been living in England, specifically in southern Cumbria or northern Lancashire.
Wow. That really narrows it down geographically.
It does. And looking at population stats from 2004, there were about 3,000 people of Southeast Asian origin living in those areas then.
Which fits Prentice's theory.
Right. It strongly suggested she might have been part of that community. Possibly, as he suspected, a wife who'd moved to the UK.
So, the next step was trying to find her within that community. How did they approach that?
They decided to go public in a targeted way. In March 2018, that's Buddhist year 2561, they set up a Facebook page.
Called Can You Identify This Woman? Makes sense.
Yeah. They shared the facial composite again, all the known details, and specifically mentioned that gold ring found on her finger.
Ah, the ring. Did that lead anywhere?
It really did. A jewelry expert looked at the pictures and had some interesting insights, suggested the ring was likely over 20 years old. And crucially, based on the style, the gold purity, probably made in Thailand.
Thailand again. Okay, this is really pointing in one direction now.
Absolutely. So investigators started trying to trace the ring's origin, and eventually they tracked it back, likely sold in the Yawar district of Bangkok.
Wow, that's specific. It really solidified the belief she was Thai.
Definitely. So now, with this strong link to Thailand, the UK police officially reached out to the Thai authorities, shared everything they had, asked for help checking missing persons reports over there.
And this international cooperation, this was the breakthrough.
This was it.
Yeah.
The key that finally started unlocking the whole thing. Because among the Thai missing persons cases, one jumped out. A woman named Lamduan Srikanya.
Okay.
Her parents had reported her missing. said she'd married a foreign man back in 1991, Buddhist year 2534, moved to England with him.
And when did they lose contact?
They lost all contact with her in 2004, the exact same year the body was found in Yorkshire.
Oh, goodness. That's chilling.
The physical description of Lamduan, when they compared it to the details of the Lady of the Hills, the similarities were undeniable, unsettlingly close.
So they showed the composite photo to Lamduan's family.
Yes, and her mother, Srikanya. When she saw that image, she felt this immediate deep connection.
Yeah.
A sense of recognition. Awful, but also maybe an answer after all those years.
She'd been searching for her daughter for so long. Even contacted Thai groups in the UK trying to find her. Poor woman.
Absolutely heartbreaking. But to be certain, they needed DNA.
Of course.
So with help from Thai organizations in the UK coordinating things, they collected DNA samples from Lamduan's parents back in Udon Thani, Thailand.
And the results?
The results were conclusive. The DNA matched.
Wow.
The DNA from Jumsi and her husband was a match to the DNA from the Lady of the Hills.
So after all that time, they finally knew. The Lady of the Hills was Lamduan Srikanya.
Identified. After more than a decade of being nameless.
So now they knew who she was. The investigation must have shifted focus then to her life, her circumstances.
Exactly. Understanding Lamduan. Who was she? She was the sixth child of Buasa and Jimsi Srikanya. She actually had a son, Kun, from a previous relationship before she met David Armitage.
Right, the man she married. How did they meet?
She met David, who was a language teacher, in Chiang Mai back in 1990, Buddhist year 2533. Things moved fairly quickly, it seems. They married in Bangkok the next year, 1991. And they went on to have 2 children together, a son, George, born in 92, and a daughter, Shauna, born in 99.
And what was their life like in England?
Well, they initially lived in Portsmouth. David was working as a university lecturer. Lamduan worked, too, in a restaurant.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing, was it?
No. Lamduan apparently faced some health issues. Sadly, several miscarriages. And eventually, money troubles seemed to crop up, which led them to move in with David's parents over in Kirklees.
And back in Thailand, her family, they must have been worried.
Increasingly so, over time. At first, Lamduan was good about sending money home, writing letters, calling her parents regularly.
But that changed.
Yeah. Later on, her family learned about her health problems, the financial strain, and Lamduan herself. She'd told them she really wanted to come back to Thailand.
But she was worried about her children.
Understandably, yes. Worried about custody, their well-being if she left England.
When was the last time they actually saw her?
She visited them in Udon Thani for about a month in 2004. Just before she disappeared. She went back to England after that visit.
And the last contact?
The last contact was a phone call. She told her parents she was having serious problems with David, that she desperately wanted to come home.
But she couldn't afford the flight.
That's what she said. She told them she had no money for a ticket because David wasn't giving her any financial support.
And that was the last time her mother spoke to her. Oh, that's just devastating.
Imagine. Her mother, Jumsi, tried calling her again and again after that. No answer. Just silence.
So the parents reported her missing?
Yes, to the Thai police. And they didn't stop there. They reached out to charities, foundations, the Consular Affairs Department in Bangkok, spent their savings trying to find any trace of her. Years of absolute agony and uncertainty for them.
Did they hear anything from the children during that time?
In 2010, so Buddhist year 2553, they did hear from Kun, Lamduan's eldest son. He contacted his grandparents.
What did he say?
He said he was doing okay, working, but he also hadn't had any contact with his mother for a long time, which must have just deepened their fears.
And then the younger son, George, he visited them.
Yes, in 2016. The same year the UK investigation reopened. Coincidentally, George went to Udon Thani to see his grandparents.
Why then?
He was telling them about his upcoming wedding, which should have been happy news, but it came with this incredibly confusing, heartbreaking detail. George apparently believed his mother, Lamduan, had returned to Thailand years ago and was living with them, with her parents.
What? He thought she was with them.
Yes. He seemed completely unaware they'd lost contact, that they were desperately searching for her.
That just shows the complete breakdown in communication, the years of silence, how utterly devastating for everyone.
It really underscores the tragedy. It took over 15 years just to put a name to the Lady of the Hills. 15 years of her family not knowing.
And even once she was identified, the family's ordeal wasn't over, was it?
No, sadly not. Knowing what happened was one thing, But they then faced real difficulty trying to get Lamduan's remains brought back to Thailand for a proper funeral.
Why was that so difficult?
Apparently, the paperwork, the legal stuff, it was complex, and it required the consent of her husband, David.
Which must have added another layer of pain and frustration for them.
Absolutely. And then, on top of everything, the COVID-19 pandemic hit.
Oh, right. That would have delayed everything.
Massively. It complicated all the legal processes, the communication between the UK and Thailand, just more delays for the family.
But eventually things started moving again as the pandemic eased.
Yes. By 2023 Buddhist year 2566, the investigation into the circumstances of her death was active again. UK authorities sent a formal request to Thailand for assistance.
So the Thai police got involved again, too.
They did. Launched their own investigation, started gathering statements from people who knew Lamduan back in Thailand.
What did people say about her?
She was described as, well, quite introverted, but very kind. People said that initially her marriage to David seemed like a good thing, a chance for a better life. But the reality seemed different. It sounded like Lamduan ended up working incredibly hard, maybe without much support from him.
And she was still supporting her family back home?
Yes, she was seen as a key provider for them. Even helped pay for her younger brother's education, despite her own difficulties.
So the investigation, both in the UK and Thailand, must have started focusing heavily on David Armitage.
He was the obvious person they needed to speak to in depth. Her husband, the last person known to have seen her.
And where was he? Still in England?
No, actually. It turned out he'd been living in Thailand for quite some time. Since 2007, Buddhist year 2550.
Really? Where in Thailand?
In Kanchanaburi province. He was working there as a temporary foreign employee at a university.
Had he ever spoken publicly about Lamduan's disappearance?
There was an interview he gave to the Sun newspaper back in 2020. In it, he said he was tired of all the questions about his wife being missing, wanted to move on with his life, his work.
Did he feel like a suspect?
He expressed that, yes. Felt the UK police treated him unfairly, more like a suspect than a grieving husband. Said he'd barely had time to grieve, but he also stated he would cooperate if asked.
Okay, so cut to 2023. The UK police team, led by DCI Prentice, they actually traveled to Thailand.
They did. Went back to Udon Thani first, collected more DNA samples from Lamduan's parents, just to be thorough.
And then they located David.
Yes, they found him in Kanchanaburi. He was living there with their daughter, Selena.
The Thai police must have assisted.
Oh yes, crucial assistance. Helped get statements from David's colleagues at the university, for instance.
Did the UK police manage to interview David and Selena then?
They tried to arrange formal interviews, but it didn't happen at that time. David apparently cited health problems for not attending, and Selena didn't attend either.
But the investigation continued gathering evidence.
Diligently. And then the big break came. Late January 2025. Based on everything they gathered over the years, all the evidence, UK police concluded they had reason to believe David Armitage was involved in Lamduan's death.
So, what happened next? Arrest.
His Thai visa was revoked, and yes, he was arrested by Thai authorities in Kanchanaburi, formally arrested as a suspect in the murder of Lamduan Srikanya.
Wow. After all this time, what about the legal side? Where would he be tried?
It got a bit complicated because of the jurisdictions. He was initially held in an immigration detention center in Thailand. He didn't fight the visa revocation, so he could choose where to be deported. He chose to return to the UK.
Was there an international arrest warrant, like Interpol?
Apparently, at that specific moment, the UK authorities felt they didn't quite have enough for an Interpol red notice, that's the highest level, asking for arrest pending extradition. They had a blue notice, which is more about locating someone or gathering information.
Okay, so he returned to the UK, and the trial will be there.
Yes, because the alleged crime, her death, occurred in the UK, the trial will take place there.
Has David Armitage said anything publicly since the arrest?
Not yet, no. He hasn't made any public comments on the case so far.
So this is definitely still an active situation.
Very much so. We expect more details will come out as the legal proceedings move forward in the UK. Things like potential motives, the exact circumstances of her death. Hopefully those questions will finally be answered.
It's just an incredibly long road to get even to this point. 21 years from when those hikers found her body, the Lady of the Hills, to a suspect finally being apprehended.
A very long, painful journey for her family.
And it's important to remember, like you said, this arrest is really just the beginning of the formal justice process for Lamduan.
Absolutely. There's still a long way to go.
We will definitely keep following this case, and if there are significant updates from the legal proceedings in the UK, we'll be sure to share them in a future narration. But for now, that brings our recounting of this long and tragic story to a close. Thank you so much for joining us as we walked through this heartbreaking and ultimately very suspenseful case. If you found this story compelling, if it gripped you, please do consider liking this, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, Horror Docs, for more true narratives like this one. Goodbye for now.